Did I forget to mention that I liked militaresque things? How about an alternate reality World War II setting that tells a story from a unique perspective? Valkyria Chronicles 4, published by Sega and released in September of 2018, is a tactical role-playing game set within a world much like the 1930s and 1940s. Two major world powers, the Atlantic Federation and the East European Imperial Empire, are once again at war for a precious resource known as Ragnite, a blue crystal ore used for fueling machinery and is used in medical practices. In other words, this stuff is like oil and morphine combined. For the sake of the video, I will be presenting the video game with Japanese voice acting. While I have nothing against the English dub of the game, I feel the Japanese voice acting portrays the story better emotionally and accurately. You control a simple Federation squad known as Squad E. Squad E has a solid reputation within their military as respectful and successful soldiers. The missions they carry out always end in success thanks to one pivotal soldier in their group, Claude Wallace, their squad leader. When I was in grade school, my parents set a high, strict house rule for my siblings and me. You cannot play video games during the weekdays, except on Friday. That meant that I had to find some form of entertainment to pass the weekdays until every Friday afternoon. Thankfully, I was allowed to borrow a laptop from my dad to stave off boredom. You know, back then, laptops had these things called disk drives that you could essentially play movies and episodic series in them. They were really useful, unlike today's laptops. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, continuing on with my story, I was a Pokemon fan of the original TV series, not the new stuff today. I mean, then again, who wasn't a fan of the Pokemon series in the 1990s as a kid? I would go to this place called Blockbuster to rent their DVDs. Right before my local Blockbuster store closed for good, I rented one last thing called Valkyria Chronicles, an animated TV series that looked fun to watch. Animated TV series, back in the day, were another form of entertainment that could be extended towards an adult audience, not just for children. And Valkyria Chronicles was definitely one of those shows. In every sense, the episodic series was really good and fun to watch. After many years of rewatching the show from time to time, I never knew there were actually video games based on the series. Once 2018 rolled around, with the release of Valkyria Chronicles 4, I knew I had to pick up the game right away. Boy, did I have a different experience with the series once I started playing the fourth game. I had no idea that I could be captivated so easily by the art design of this game. The watercolor and pencil graphics are used marvelously. War is something that should look dark and sinister, with some flickers of light to help deepen the shadows. Did you think war could look this colorful? I sure heck did not. Because of the use of the art and design, Each raging battlefield, sorrowful moments, and enlightening scenes somehow come together as if they were made to harmonize one another. A good analogy of this is like making a banana Brussels sprout sandwich and gorging yourself nonstop. While we know that anime-like characters all have a similar stature of presentation, the character design of this game is spectacular. I especially love Claude's appearance. The hair, face model, and his clothing style is something I got behind pretty quickly. He looks authentic in his world, truly putting on an appearance of an aspiring squad leader. The vehicle designs are all awesome. Federation and Imperial tank designs give each world power a distinct look and feel. Military uniforms are standardized, albeit the main cast of characters, which is something that can be seen from both factions. I especially love how Squad E's tank, the Hafen, is designed. The unique appearance gives Squad E a robust, symbolic vehicle among the other squads in the military. Just so you know, I'm a huge tank buff. Aside from the in-game models themselves, there's this comic book-like aspect that ties together the sound effects for the game's audio. The subtle expressions of text that insinuate the sound effects can easily put a smile on your face. Last but not least are the battlefield locations. Open grass fields, cities, compounds, ice caverns, metal interiors, and even bogs are all enticing to view as you fight for your squad's lives. Built with the intention of proper level design, the assets used on every map are authentic and praiseworthy. The art and design work in Valkyria Chronicles 4 is nothing short of brilliant. You can play this game knowing that your view of war can be a smorgasbord of colors. Nothing spells fun than playing Valkyria Chronicles 4. The way you play the game is much like a tabletop board game. You and your opponent share a common currency called CP within the game. CP is exchanged to move a selected unit or perform some sort of action on the battlefield. Moving a unit is the main point of the game, as you can either run, walk, aim, fire, heal, crouch behind cover, climb, and so on within the 3D environment. Taking control of a unit and performing an action is the best thing about this game. There is little restriction of what you are capable of doing with your units, which allows a lot of freedom of choice. You can also use CP on a dynamic gameplay function called orders. Orders are not really an original gameplay concept, but add a little bit more moves to create the game-changing effects. These tend to be used for altering bad or tough situations. Once you are out of CP, the turn ends and your opponent gets their turn to move their units in similar fashion. The compelling interest within the gameplay of Valkyria Chronicles 4 is the wide array of classes that bolster your fighting force. Classes are divided between units in 7 distinct forms: Scouts, Shock Troopers, Lancers, Engineers, Snipers, Artillery, and Vehicles. In case you are not a military nerd, Scouts are your fastest units but sacrifice armor for speed. Shock Troopers are your vanguard units that you typically see in movies or TV shows. Lancers are your tank busters or anti-vehicle units. Engineers are your field medics for both vehicles and infantry. Snipers are your long-range combat units that hit single targets from a distance. Artillery units provide long-distance bombing support, and vehicles are your last line of defense and heavy hitters. Scenarios within the game are individually unique and provide enough depth to summon every unit within your roster. You may need to get creative with the units that you select within the scenario as the game pulls twists and turns to spice up your experience. There may not be any enemy tanks in the beginning of the scenario, making you think Lancers are actually not needed. Then all of a sudden enemy tanks appear, and all you have in your roster deployed are Snipers and Scouts. Oops. The gameplay for Valkyria Chronicles 4 gave me an appealing conquest of war unlike any other. The only thing that is actually missing within the series is aircraft vehicles, but other than that, playing as Squad E and fighting a ruthless enemy world power is a test of courage and perseverance. At least, within the confines of your home. Claude Wallace, a small-town boy who was bullied profusely as a weak and easily frightened kid, decides to change himself by entering the military academy. Through his academic career, he earns class valedictorian and is prompted to take command of a squad upon graduation. However, little did he know that his neighborhood bully, the girl that found him appalling when he was little, and among others from his childhood, are all placed under his command. Claude not only has to show that he has changed, but establish respect and authority from the entire squad.
お出ましか。
諸君ら E 小隊の指揮官を紹介する。クロード・ウォレス少尉だ。
クロード・ウォレス。おいおい。
まさかこんなところで再会するとは。いやよろしく頼むカイラズ。
弱虫クロード、てめえが指揮官だと？俺は絶対認めねえ。
貴様、
僕がこの E 小隊の隊長だ。
あら、ずいぶん若いのね。だけどさっきの采配なかなかだった。クロード・ウォレス。
The story is pretty heavy in the beginning and only gets better and better throughout the course of the game. Eventually, you find yourself liking Claude for who he is and how he manages to solve problems personally and professionally. He is not arrogant or bashful, but passionate and sincere, which then reflects well on the other cast of characters throughout the story fabulously. In fact, the story leads to a bit of honest romance that makes Claude more likable. He generally is a solid main character that was set up to be a failure from the beginning.
君にプレゼントが届く。
きれい。これも予知していたの？
空ばかり見ていたおかげでね。あの頃の冴えない僕に感謝しないと。僕にしては気の利いたプレゼントだろ。必ず生きてハーフェンに帰ろう。
一緒にね。
ああ、約束だ。
The other roster of characters, of course, have some gravity-pulling, likable aspect about them. Roz is an arrogant and foolhardy officer who learns to be a team player. Lena is a dead-eye sniper that is using her older brother's name and dossier records as an alias to find him. Riley is a brilliant inventor who wishes to re-establish her destroyed family's factory practice. Chimera is a Valkyrie who is shunned in her youth and wishes to make a name for herself. And last but not least, Klaus is a charming and good-humored Imperial general who has a passion for rivaling Squad E. You get to see both world power perspectives within the story of Valkyria Chronicles 4 and cannot help but liking the entire cast in some regard. Aside from the Claude fan service I've been ultimately giving, the European War, which is depicted as an alternate reality World War II scenario, is really interesting. The East European Imperial Empire, literally, is aggressive in their actions for taking over the entire continent. They deploy these special women known as Valkyries, which display inhuman abilities that can level towns and cities instantly. Valkyries, in a sense, are the equivalency to atomic bombs. There's an entire lore section and backstory of the Valkyries, which is mysterious and interesting should you want to learn more about them. The world-building aspect is something that you can research and discover, which makes for an intriguing pastime activity. You should take the time and look at the amount of things that are related to World War II and find the matches and similarities. I will not go into detail about every aspect, but some noticeable similarities are obvious. The Ragnite ore being oil, and the race of people known as Darksons, which are a discriminated race across all of Europa, much like the Jews during World War II. Take command of Squad E and discover how hard it is to fight for yourself, comrades, and even country. I guarantee there will at least be one thing that you can appreciate about Valkyria Chronicles 4. Valkyria Chronicles 4 is 10th on my list of favorite video games of all time. There's nothing quite like the game that brings together a tragic war met with awesome gameplay and art design. I fell in love with the game pretty quickly the first time I played it. If I did not rent Valkyria Chronicles as the TV series, I surely would have missed playing this fantastic video game. The reason Valkyria Chronicles 4 is 10th is because the formula for the game eventually becomes exhausting. Turn after turn, you are faced with somewhat similar aspects of gameplay. Much like rock, paper, scissors, lancers beat tanks, shock troopers beat infantry units, and snipers beat boss units. The patterns become noticeable, and you're left with a sense of mastery to beat every scenario with just a few simple thoughts. It's not really all that hard. However, despite that small critique, I'm happy this game was released. I learned that the third title will remain a Japanese exclusive. This saddens me, and I wish I could own all of these titles of Valkyria Chronicles in disc format.
故郷の町が焼かれたその日に、みんな軍に志願した。あの日の僕らは、命を懸けうるものがあると信じていた。それがどんな代償を払うものか、知りもしないで。それでもあれが僕らの青春だった。